Let me get to our presenters today. So most of you obviously know us, Franz Inc., and Jans Osman, our CEO. Jans will be presenting today. And joining him is our customer from N3 Results, Bert Smith. Bert is a technology evangelist specializing in sales and marketing, advanced technologies, and for the past 8 years has been focused on AI product development. And today they're going to share with you some of the results that they've seen with the work we're doing with them in knowledge graphs at N3 Results. So to lead us off, Bert is going to take the reins and give us a description of what's going on. So thank you, gentlemen, and take it away.
All right. Craig, thanks very much, Jans. Great to be here at Oakland with you folks, and happy to be sharing a little bit of what we've been working on over the last many months. So I'm going to speak about the business challenges for N3. I'll talk about the company in a second, and particularly why we chose to work with the Franz team to solve this rather complex, challenging new application for our customer. I'll also point out that there's a fair amount of intellectual property that was generated in building this solution that you'll see the results of here in a moment, including trade secrets and also some patent applications that have been created. So let me give you a little bit of background about N3 and specifically what their business is about, what our business is about. There we go. Sorry, I had a little trouble with the slide there. So N3 is an international company with literally 3,000 employees that specializes in providing demand sales generation, lead generation. They literally have people that are on the phone and they are smiling and dialing, as it said, into corporations in the SMB space, small, medium business space, with the total focus of developing new lead and business opportunities for their clients. You can see from the slide deck here, they've got really a wonderful collection of high-end Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies as clients. We're going to talk specifically about one of their clients today, which is Cisco, the technology platform company for telecommunications. But N3 has developed a set of technologies and techniques and specialties to basically provide and represent the end customer in their phone selling process. So they get on the phone and it will be, hi, this is Bert Smith from Cisco, and they know more about Cisco products than perhaps anybody other than Cisco direct employees around the sales side of things. So it's really a big challenge for them to get up to speed and work with products. And one of the big challenges is to be able to be very technically credible. So the platform that we've developed is to help their salespeople, their telephone salespeople, they call them BDRs or business development reps, to be more productive in their phone conversations, be more helpful to their customers in their phone conversations. And, you know, sales has changed dramatically over the years when you look at enterprise software and enterprise hardware solutions. And the expectations that customers have is high credibility and that the person I'm talking to on the other end can help solve my business problems. And that's what really N3 has focused on in developing this technology in conjunction with the Franz team. So let me talk a bit about the specific need and some of the challenges, and then we'll talk about the technology solutions. So the fundamental need was that N3 wanted to improve the quality of their customer interactions, their interactions with customers through their BDRs in the form of chat conversations, so text chats, and also basically sales calls, phone calls. The first version of this is built around chats, and that's what I'll speak to today. And obviously the whole goal here is to improve revenue conversion. So how can we do things that are going to impact the selling environment and improve the outcomes, revenue production? Challenges were pretty substantial, and in part, the challenges that you see here is why this problem could only be solved with the combination of a graph solution and a semantic technology solution, which is why we came to the Franz team for their guidance and help in developing this. So one of the challenges is that Cisco has over 5,000 products. And for a telesalesperson to be able to intelligently talk about 5,000 products, that would overwhelm an expert that lived at Cisco for the rest of their lives. So we had to develop a solution that would help the BDRs guide their conversations and be authoritatively more helpful in giving consultative services to their customers to help convert that into sales. So this is done, as I mentioned, the first phase of this we've developed is around live chats. Cisco does a lot of chat interaction with their clients. It's efficient for the client because you can have an asynchronous dialogue. It's very efficient for the Cisco people because they can obviously handle multiple chats. And what you'll see are the spool off that takes place from their website. So if you go to their website today, you can log into Cisco and you can log into a chat session. And that chat session is actually being spooled out to the software that we're about to talk about and show you about. So to give you a little bit of framework, Cisco uses a methodology to help qualify people in these chats or phone conversations. And this methodology, they've constructed around 3 axes. You see them in the chart on the left side here. And, you know, the first thing they want to do is, what's the persona of the person I'm talking with? You know, is this a CIO? Is this a small, medium business buyer? You know, is this someone who's buying for security purposes? And that helps to craft the dialogue with the end customer. If you really understand where they're coming from, you're going to speak in vernaculars and terminology that makes sense for them. The right-hand side is the industry. And for those folks who haven't spent a lot of time in sales, you can't hold a conversation with anyone of any authority if you don't know their industry. And so you have to understand industry. And that's part of the diagnostic of the framework that we've created, is to determine industry. But the most interesting piece that we've developed is this piece you see in the middle, the notion of demand scenario. And what we're doing with these categories is understanding what's the need, what's a combination of the need and the use case for this individual. And this framework helps us to categorize what's that person's need. And I'll be frank and tell you, having been in sales and marketing all my career, the most interesting need scenario, if you will, demand scenario, is someone that wants to purchase something today, obviously. But we also have to be able to triage the chats so that if someone's calling in and they're having a technical problem and they came in through the sales chat dialogue, which is what that is listed as, we need to quickly vector them over to someone that can help them. So we want to be able to triage these chats and look for things like, hey, I need to upgrade what I'm doing, or I need firmware help. And it shapes the dialogue that the BDR is going to have. If I understand, oh, you're trying to upgrade something, or you have existing hardware and you're trying to get more performance out of it, I will guide you on how to best optimize the use case for that piece of technology. So on the right side, you see an example of what the chats look like, and you can see there's what you'd expect, a dialogue back and forth between an N3 specialist, a BDR specialist, and a customer. And what the technology is that we built is doing is it's monitoring that chat transcript, and it's looking for key phrases, keywords, and concepts that help us to categorize the demand scenario. In this case, we can see, and I've highlighted it there in the circles, you know, I need help choosing, I'm planning on purchasing, and then finally purchase today. That helps us develop and understand, oh, the demand scenario here is obviously an immediate purchase request. We then craft the dialogue for the BDRs on the fly in real time to guide their conversation. Similarly, around those 5,000 products or SKUs that are out there, you see in green, I have one of their routers. Actually, it's a device I personally own. And the RV series of routers has certain specifications. So we're able to quickly pull up cut sheets and data sheets for that product when we identify that information in the chat. N3 has developed a technology, a patented technology for their business, where they're able to take all of that information that I just shared with you in the set of recommendations and overlay it on a screen for their salespeople, so that on the left side, they're looking at a traditional CRM, a customer relationship management screen, like Salesforce, for example. And on the right side in that box is the N3 overlay that links over to the Semantic Graph database, which has the taxonomies and the product information, and is doing the triaging of the language dialogue to provide recommendations based on industry, demand scenario, and the persona. And that little box actually floats on the screen, so they can swap out. The CRM could be Microsoft Dynamics underneath there or any other platform, because as a company, we at N3 have to be able to provide technology that fits whatever our customers want. And if they're using Salesforce, we're using Salesforce. So a final slide here, because at the end, it only matters if we get some results. And what you see here is actual graph data that we've collected during the implementation of the overlay technology, before and after the application of the AI solution that Franz developed for us. And you can see a dramatic improvement of MQLs is a metric in the marketing space, marketing qualified leads. So these are leads that the marketing team has deemed to meet a minimum bar of qualification before they hand it to a salesperson. You don't want to give a salesperson a lead that's not going to be a good, solid lead. So we've used the AI technology to improve dramatically, 30 some odd %, the results of the marketing qualified leads that we pass to our salespeople, and that has generated a commensurate amount of improved revenue recognition for the client. So, Jans, that's what I wanted to share, at least on the front end. Now, I think you're going to talk a little bit about how you put the pieces together to make this all possible.
Yes, well, thanks, Bert. It was a great introduction. So now let's go a little bit deeper and talk about the background technologies and how we put it all together. So I'm going to talk about these topics here. Actually, I want to talk about the first topic, which is a knowledge graph that is behind all of this. Yeah, it's a knowledge graph that knows about companies and subsidiaries and context and products and whatever else you might know about the companies that you call in general and the history that you have with that company. But that is too big, and we will talk about that another time. Today, we'll talk mostly about the tech-based and machine learning technologies that we all put together in this knowledge graph. So we'll talk about taxonomies, and I'm assuming that most people in the audience know what a taxonomy is by now. We talk about taxonomy-based entity extraction and sentiment analysis. Then once you've done that and you extracted sentiments and entities, then you can start doing analytics. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Then Bert already gave a great example of the text classification that we did, and there's not much I can add to that, but I'll give it a try. Then we'll talk about product recommendations. Then when we started, we only had the text chats between a Cisco website visitor and an N3 agent, but that's just probably less than 1% of all the interactions. So now we're working very actively on doing all of this with speech recognition, and I'll say a little bit more about that later. And then once you've created this knowledge graph, then actually it's pretty hard for most application developers to, in a short time, learn the intricacies of Sparkle and graph search, etc. So we also did a lot of work on making it easy to create custom services and APIs for application developers. All right, so let me take it away. Let me start. So first, I'm assuming that you guys, the audience, knows about what taxonomies are. I mean, we talk to a lot of big companies, and we now see that every top 500 company already has one or more taxonomists working, Because how can you ever do any analytics if you don't agree on the words that you use in your business? Yeah, and the taxonomy tools are there to put the understanding of these terms into software and then do something smart with it. So the taxonomies that we use enable us to look at words and terms, titles, concepts, products, buyer intent, and then a concept called band that I'll talk about in a second, sentiments, and everything else that you need is a common understanding in your enterprise about the things you talk about. So we're using for this project a tool called PoolParty, working with them, doing multiple projects together. And so here you see, for example, one taxonomy that we had to develop for this, which is a sales taxonomy. So at N3, when you're a salesperson, you try to get the customer to a stage where you then finally can hand it off to, say, your client like Cisco or Microsoft or anyone else. And the stage where you want to get to is called band. And basically that means that the salesperson established that there was a budget for the thing that people wanted to buy, and that there's authority, so there's a person that actually can sign, there's an actual need for it, and they even know a timeline. Yeah, so these are very important concepts in sales calls. So we captured all of those in the sales taxonomy. In this PoolParty tool, you can basically create the tree of concepts. Yeah, and then for every concept, say decision maker, we have a preferred label, and then a whole set of alternative labels. And basically in a taxonomy project, I would say 80% of the time goes into creating alternative labels instead of the preferred labels. And then you have to always decide when you go through the words in your corpus where it fits in the tree. So what are the broader concepts, what are the narrower concepts, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, and the tool will also help you with taking a whole bunch of conversations together, do analysis on it, find out the most frequent used words, and then a human being can sit there and kind of with the machine in the loop or the human in the loop create this taxonomy tree. So we have one for sales, and then obviously we have one for the products itself. As Bert said, we have about 5,000 products, and that multiplies with a factor of on average of 4 or 5 for all the alternative labels for every concept. So here you see our Cisco taxonomy then, and here you just see a few alternative labels. Well, and that's enough for now about these taxonomies. And then once you have the taxonomies, we import these taxonomies into AllegroGraph, and then from there on we can start doing our entity extraction. Now there are, so we use several entity extractors. So PoolParty itself or alternative tools like SmartLogic have pretty good entity extractors. But when it comes to recognizing products, then they all are, well, they're not optimized for product names. Product names are so weird. Yeah, the Catalyst 9300 XV. Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways that a human being can spell that or say that we had to write our own entity extractor completely specialized for product names, also taking away some of the pain of creating all these alt labels. Yeah, so we look at all the permutations of how a product name can be said, then with a bunch of heuristic, and we get pretty good at finding every tech term in a particular conversation. And we even need this for post-processing for when we use speech technology, and all of this will be built in as of AG 660. Now, sometimes you want to do more entity extraction where you also want names of people, names, organization, currencies. Then you have additional tools that can help you with that. And some of them even will give you then automatically links back to the linked open data cloud, whether it's DBpedia, GeoNames, etc. Yeah? And we provide all these APIs so you can use these entity extractors whenever you need them. Then sometimes you need to do more than an entity extractor can do. For example, you want to do event detection. Then one really cool tool is Python Spacey, yeah, with a lot of NLP capabilities. There's just a new version come out. It's an awesome tool if you need to do special language models and something more intricate than an entity extractor does. And then all of the extractors that I talked about provide some kind of sentiment analysis. So that's the first thing that we did. And then here you see, actually I can do this live if you wanted to. I think I have it here. Yeah. So basically, this is how we start. So what you're seeing here is our tool graph in the table view. And you see that here is basically, I would say, a Salesforce record where the chat transcript was embedded in. Yeah, and here you see the whole transcript. And when we did the first version of this work, we just did all the analytics against the entire chat, but we quickly found out that it's way more important that we actually split the agent phrases and the client phrases. Yeah, so here are all the things that the agent said, and then somewhat lower we have all the things that the client said, and then we can also look at the terms that were recognized. Say, here's the terms that were recognized for the things that the agent said, and now you can also see how this all fits together with the taxonomy, because we have a Salesforce record, we have the terms that were, so we enriched the Salesforce record with in our knowledge graph with the technical terms, and then we could look at a particular router, and here you see that this is a term, so we don't say we recognize these words in the text, but actually here are the taxonomy concepts that we detected. Yeah, and so here you see that this is the particular security router, which has a broader routers, which has a broader of networks and related hardware, which has a broader this, and then all the way up to, well, whatever you want to do. And if I would look at this in the graph view, you could see, yeah, we have here our Salesforce record with a lot of metadata properties, but it's directly linked to the taxonomy and the words that were recognized. All right, so let me get back to my presentation. There were kind of analytics you can do, and we'll show you some really simple ones, but you can imagine that there's a wealth of opportunity. Yeah, that would benefit the management of the N3, or that would benefit the agents themselves in one glass, or that would benefit Cisco to see what agents are actually talking about. But let me just show you some simple examples of what we do. So for example, we can look at the number of negative, neutral, and positive chats for a team of people working on a project. So you see that here, it doesn't look like much, but if you then display the same set here as a ratio of positive to negative, then you see that certain people are way more positive than other people. Yeah, so this is one really interesting. And of course, this has a relationship to the outcome of the sale. Then, for example, you want to know, well, what do people actually talk about? Well, this is Cisco, so no one in the entire audience here will be surprised that it's about network routers, switches, etc. So it's actually more interesting to look at what are the sellable products. So when we created the taxonomies, we also added one ontology element to objects, and that is whether or not an object is something that you can actually buy with your credit card. Yeah. And so now we can also look at the sellable products, and now we see a completely different list of things that people usually talk about. Yeah. Or now that we have sellable products, we could say, well, what team member usually talks about abstract concepts, and what team member in general talks about things that you can actually buy. Yeah, and so we see that this person way more talks about sellable products than the other people, and again, that has an influence on whether or not you make a particular sale. You could start comparing the agent, and you could say, what does this person usually talk about, or what does this person usually talk about? And you could start using that for routing. Let me give you an example here. Yeah, so you could say, so who has the most experience on product, say the SFP module, and then you see it's this person, or who has most experience with this one, and it's this person, and you can start using that for routing. If something comes in, you can do a seamless routing from one person to another person. And finally, I mean, there's so many more things, and you can start looking at, okay, so given a particular industry, yeah, what are the most mentioned topics in that particular industry? And again, very important for your sales conversation. Then product recommendations. So we do a lot of analytics on the chats where we look at correlations and co-occurrences and odds ratios between products. So the one that we like most is odds ratios, where you look at the co-occurrence between two technical terms mentioned or sales terms mentioned, and then you correct the co-occurrence for how many times both terms actually happen in the entire population of terms. And then you get numbers that show how surprising it is that two numbers actually happen together. And those odds ratios are part of the graph itself. And so we can use that then to make direct recommendations. For example, here, we see that here was one lead with a chat, and we recognized some products like the RV325. And what you actually see is that there's a high, if someone talks about the RV325, in general, they also will talk about routers in general. Yeah? This is just co-occurrence. And we do way more sophisticated things that I don't want to talk about, but that we can then start using as recommendations. All right, so here's another picture that if someone talks about product X, say this tablet, then they will also very likely talk about these other products. And so very, very useful both for the Cisco people, but also for the learning process of the agents. And then I get to the text classification and machine learning. Brett already extensively talked about what we do here to actually automatically learn. And I have a few slides in about 5 minutes that go in way more detail how we do that. So let me skip that for now here. Although I could say we start with a chat. Yeah, we find a certain terms in this chat. We build a machine learning model, and then we can finally say that this was an immediate purchase request. Yeah, so this is just a little flow, but I'll show you another flow later. Then speech recognition. Yeah, only a small percentage of interaction, actually it's way less than 5%, are chats. The rest is spoken conversations. So we started looking at also using voice to text, yeah, so that we can use the same technology directly on the voice interactions. I've been, well, 20 years ago, I was already working in the area of speech recognition at a telecom company. And now it's 20 years later, and I'm in awe how amazingly good Google is, for example, with speech recognition. I mean, truly in awe. The one problem is we tried Google out on product names, and then suddenly you find out that, well, Google is mostly geared toward natural text, but not so much Cisco product names. So we looked around for various other technologies, and we finally found a small boutique company, and that gives us a trainable technology. So now we can take our taxonomy of products and put it into and to do something to it so that we can use that to train the speech technology. And now we can use a voice to text system and actually get the product names in our text, and then we can start using our the technology that I talked about so far. Then one more thing that I was promised to talk about is, so what we found that application developers don't want to spend time too much on learning all the intricacies of semantic graphs and knowledge graphs, and they find it way easier if they can actually do all the input and all the output into a semantic graph using JSON and JSON-LD. And actually last week I gave a whole webcast about how to use JSON and JSON-LD with AllegroGraph. So if you want to know more about it, please go to that webcast. It's on our website. You can find it there. And I think for now, that's probably all I can say about that. All right. So then finally, let me give you one more time a summary of the technology that is involved in the knowledge graph that we've now applied to various projects, but most importantly for N3, yeah, where you have, this is just a summary of what I've said so far. So you have your chats, it could also be emails and text. You have documents that you use with PenDocs or Apache Tiki, turn it directly into text, or what I just described, we can use voice to text, and then put it into your knowledge graph directly. Ultimately, of course, so that you can do any kind of analytics that you want to do. Then what I talked about is how we have we use a taxonomy tool, PoolParty, and we create a taxonomy, and that goes directly into the knowledge graph. We have an entity extractor. We can use external ones, or we have our own built-in AllegroGraph. Yeah, that takes the taxonomy in the text and generates your entities. We have our own sentiment analyzer. Yeah, again, take the taxonomies in the text and you create sentiments. But again, you can also use external ones. Then about the the text classification part. So, for example, for this particular project, we took more than 20,000 chats, and we had human beings label the chats to see whether something was a direct sales, or whether something was an optimize or an upgrade, etc., etc. But in some cases, you don't need to label. You can use other technologies to actually label the text. And then the next step is that you take the entities in the text and the labels, and you create a text. You input it into a text classifier. You build a classification model, and then from that moment on, you can do real-time classification of chats coming in. Yeah. Then the other thing I talked about is that you want to know about the relationships between entities in the text, and you use it for recommendations or for your analytics. So we have software in the product that can look at the entities and the sentiments and then create co-occurrences or odds ratios. And then all of that is available in our semantic search. So again, if your application developers build their GUIs on top of the knowledge graph, yeah, you can build most of the complex queries and semantic search directly into the product and make it available as a REST call. And from that moment on, you can just call APIs to get the information that you need out of the database. And so, so this is the semantic search, but of course, in addition, you can do the kind of analytics that I just talked about. I gave you some examples. It's very easy to do ad hoc queries against the platform. You don't have to write very complicated SQL queries, but we also have a tool to build queries automatically in Graph. And we even use it as we showed before with OneGlass for real-time decision support. And with that, I want to end this session and see if there's any questions for Bert or for me.
All right. Well, thank you, Bert, and thank you, Jans, for that. So if you have questions, there's a box that you can type those in. While people are adding the questions to the mix, I have a couple here that came in so that we can get started with. So this one looks like for you, Bert. Why did you choose a semantic graph approach?
So it was an easy and a hard choice, I guess, to be honest. There wasn't a way to solve this problem without using graph technology. If you look at just simply being able to understand the concepts in a dialogue, you're not going to dump that into a SQL server. So from a graph perspective, we needed to use that as a solution. And then obviously this is all focused around dialogue and text. So a semantic platform really was the only choice to try to solve this problem.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Bert. We have another one here. Maybe Jans, why don't you take this one? Do you use your own machine learning algorithms?
Yes. So there's kind of two answers to this. One, the text classification is built into our product. It's our own technology. We have various machine learning algorithms that we built in, but AllegroGraph is also I would say a proud member of the Anaconda community. So you can install AllegroGraph, the AllegroGraph Python client, for example, directly in Anaconda, and then you can use any machine learning algorithm that you want. Yeah, we made it very easy to do a Sparkle query against the semantic graph and turn the results of the Sparkle query automatically into a pandas, and then you can do whatever you want to do with it, as long as ultimately you take the results of your analytics and put it back in the graph so that you create a learning graph.
Okay. We have another one here. We'll give this one to you, Jans. Can AllegroGraph ingest ontologies?
Yes, yes, yes. So we obviously, I mean, like semantic graph is all about ontologies, but there's another way to look at this question, because what we see is that every time when we talk to people, they get a little bit confused between taxonomies and ontologies. And the easiest way I've now found to explain it, that ontologies are to describe objects, yeah, almost like in an object-oriented language, describe the features of a particular object, whereas a taxonomy is way more focused on linguistics, the links between concepts. But in reality, what I see in most of the projects we do is that you can mix taxonomies and ontologies together. So,
Okay.
if that helps.
All right. Bert, here's one for you. From project start, how long did it take to see real results?
So for the first turn of this, which is to be able to process chats, elapsed time was about 3 months, but a fair amount of that was part of developing a solution, and so, you know, it took time for us to find ways to solve particular aspects of this problem that just hadn't been solved before. So it just took a lot of thinking by the team and collaboration of the team. So I would say, you know, for a project like this, if we were to do it again, and we in fact have implemented this for an additional new customer for N3 recently, and that took place in a matter of weeks, and that was done, that effort is largely around the taxonomy that Jans was just speaking to. Is you have to develop a taxonomy, and if you have thousands of SKUs and alt labels that you need to generate, that's just manpower that has to be done. But we were able to get a new customer, and it's a very large computer company client of N3 that was on that banner list you saw there, and we were able to get them up and running in a matter of weeks.
Great. Sounds very powerful. Okay, so in the interest of time, we'll take one more question here. It's kind of a open-ended one. It's how do I get started? Do you offer taxonomy consulting services, or what are the first steps, would you suggest?
Well, if you just have a corpus of text that you're interested in and see how you can analyze it, then yes, the most natural thing for us is to just start with a taxonomy project where we create the first version of the 20%, yeah, the first 80% that can be done in 20% of the time, yeah, and then we turn, yeah, and then we take it from there.
Okay, well, great. So I'd like to thank everybody for attending the webinar. Bart, thank you for joining us. Jans, thanks
Pleasure.
again. For those of you who are interested, we will send some follow-up emails with the recording and the slides. And if we didn't get to your questions, feel free to send them in to us, or if you add them here, we'll get back to you. Coming up shortly, we'll have some webcasts. The one will be AI requires more than machine learning. And then we're going to get into another one, storage layer versus access level security for your database. So a couple of interesting topics coming up down the road. So look for our emails, follow us on Twitter. We're in a race with PewDiePie on YouTube, so subscribe to us on YouTube. Thanks a lot, and have a good rest of your day. Thanks a lot.